Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know, during our episodes, I talk to writers for a half hour about their craft, about how they were inspired, what they've produced, what their plans for the future might be. We also talk to some other strange people who might sculpt or paint or be actors. We cast a pretty wide net, and we have other artists on occasionally. So if you have ideas for people to be on the writer's block, whether they're writers or not, watch for our address at the end of the program and send along the names if you like. I'd also like to remind you that past shows of the writer's block are available at Sawyer Library. You can go in and take a past show out and take it home, watch it, bring it back as you would a book. Most of the shows are available down there right now on VHS. There are plans to have them moved to DVD electronically. That's a little bit in the future. So don't throw out your VHS player just yet. Tonight we do have an author. Her name is Joanne Hart. She is a novelist. And I'm going to read from the jacket of her well publicized and well received novel, Addled. Joanne attended Harvard, has an MFA from Bennington, and is a regular contributor to the Boston Globe Sunday magazine. She lives with her family in Massachusetts, but I'm telling you a secret, it's Gloucester. That's not available to the general public, but I can share that with you. Addled is her first novel. Welcome to the Writer's Block.
Thank you for having me, John.
As I mentioned before the show, I wanted to ask some real softball questions.
Yep.
Why are you a writer?
Why? Well, basically, somebody told me I should be writing, that I was getting my undergraduate degree at Harvard Extension while my kids were young, because I couldn't very well, expect them to go to college if I hadn't finished my own degree. So I was finishing up my undergraduate degree at Harvard Extension, and you notice how marketing had said attended Harvard. First of all, it makes it sound as if I dropped out.
Or were kicked out for
but
too many
it was,
parties in the dorm. Or
right,
something.
but it was actually Harvard Extension, a wonderful school at Harvard University, and I was social sciences major, and I was probably going to get an MSW, Master's in Social Work. And Harvard has requirements when you're in the degree program at the Extension, and one of the requirements is writing, that they expect Harvard graduates to be able to write when they get out. So it was 2 mandatory expository writing courses, and the first one I took was the most basic, like 101, the word, because I was just, I'd never written or anything, and I was just trying to get through it like I got through math requirements. And then the other course turned out, when you're in the degree program, you get to look up the student recommendations of the teachers. And so I went through them and found a teacher, Maxine Rodberg, that everybody just seemed to love, and took her course, even though it was more like a 200 level course, so that was a little scary. And it was also called Writing Your Life, which I didn't realize at the time, because I knew nothing, that meant memoir. And it was still expository, it was not fiction. And so I'm in this class and I'm having fun. Wow, writing about your life turns out to be lots of fun. And she called me halfway through the semester, and this is like 1995 and 1996. She calls me into her office and says, you really should be writing fiction. And and I thought, well, she must think I've been lying or something, about in the memoir. And she's like, no, you write like a fiction writer. So she goes, I'm going to free you. You go, don't worry about sticking to life anymore. You just go and write fiction. And she gave me this huge pile of writing books and short story anthologies, and just sent me on my way. And that was how I started to write.
Who was that teacher?
That was Maxine Rodberg, who actually now, she is an author. She has a collection of short stories, but then she went on to become the dean of the Crimson School, which is the Harvard school for Harvard summer school for inner city kids. Yeah, getting them ready. And they just graduated their first class this June after 4 years, and 2 of those 25 kids actually were accepted at Harvard.
So the social school lost one of its candidates because they forced you to write?
Yeah. So in the end, I still got my undergraduate degree in social sciences because at that point it was too late to do anything
Oh.
about it. So I got my degree in undergraduate degree in social sciences, but instead of going on for a master's in, say, social work, I went on and got a master's in writing at Bennington College.
So, but that course,
Yeah.
the course as part of your social science
Yeah.
curriculum, converted you.
Yep.
And
She just told me that I should be writing fiction, and I was like, so I did.
was that an immediate kind of epiphany for you? You said, "Oh yeah, I get it now."
No, not at all. I was just, very obedient student, and she says I'm to write fiction, then that's what I did. And then she got me into a fiction course the following semester to find out more about this thing called fiction. And then I just took to it after a while. It took a while to change from known fact to just letting your imagination go crazy. You can do anything you want in fiction. So.
And when did you start to do anything you wanted with Addled? I'm going to hold the book up
Yeah.
in case our audience has not seen it so far. This is the novel Addled that the Social Work School at Harvard Extension created indirectly. When did you start work on this, Joanne?
Probably I started taking notes on it 10 years ago. I was working on a novel because after the course Maxine got me into next was called Writing the Novel. So I go from never having written a word of fiction in my life to writing the novel. And so I'm in the course, so I start writing a novel. And first novels are notoriously coming-of-age novels. And that is, in fact, what I was writing, coming-of-age novel. And I'd read, over the years, it's basically what taught me to write, is writing and rewriting this damn novel over and over again. And I never got an agent for it because every agent said, after seeing the précis, they like, no, we just don't do coming-of-age novels. We don't want a coming-of-age novel, meaning that the heroine is a teenager. So nobody handles it. So, but anyway, while I'm writing short stories, which are getting published in literary magazines during this whole time, and while I'm working and reworking this novel, I start taking quiz. Oh, I'm still in Harvard Extension, and I'm taking a science course called Animal Behavior, which oddly enough turned out to be mostly math, of all things, and chemistry. But at any rate, I'm driving down to school, and animal behavior is much on my mind, even though it's mostly formulas, and I see a Canada goose on a golf course that's right there on 128. And I just sort of think to myself, oh, that must be a terrible problem, having geese all over the golf course. There's golfers there. It's a, sanitation issue. I have livestock myself. We are a farm, and so I'm quite familiar with, the outfall of...
The problem.
Yes, the problems of livestock. And so I just started taking notes. And I just opened up a document when I came home and simply wrote that it was a nice conflict, between humans and the animals, being the Canada geese. And the humans were the golfers and the administration and the membership. And so it grew from there, really over a period of like 7 years. Every once in a while I'd think about something, I'd think of who a character might be, and I'd just make a few notes. And when I finally gave up on the other novel, after it won second place in a novel award, unpublished novel award, but not first place. Then I put it in the drawer and forgot about it, and opened up this document, which was, to this day, is still just called Goose. And I opened it up, and at that point, I had 40 pages of notes, and I had basically the entire plot was there in these notes, so that without consciously thinking about it, was all there. All the characters were there. They weren't named yet. And even as so then I started working diligently on the novel.
And this is late 90s now?
No, now it's 2003.
So I think our audience is interested in the
The
period
ti-
of gestation for
Yes,
something to...
yes. So basically, in the late '90s is when I first see the goose on the golf course, and it's years of taking notes while I'm finishing Harvard Extension, getting my MFA at Bennington, which is a 2-year experience, and still finishing rewriting that first novel that's in a drawer. Which, as my agent says, first novels are like pancakes, you toss the first one. And that is where it is, in a drawer. And so once I started, so it'd been a few years of taking notes. I finally opened it up, which was after Bennington, and I graduated from Bennington in 2000. And this was a year or so later. And I started working on it. I was in a writers group in Cambridge, and I have been a long time writers group, a group that had been in existence long before me and is still in existence today. And it was a type of group, writers group, you get vetted for, and that we hire our own instructor. And this was Maxine Rodberg. It was a group of hers at one time. So I was a referral into that group. And so at this point, our instructor, who leads us in the workshop, is Marcy Hirschman. Oh, and I'm drawing a blank. I hope she doesn't see this. I can't remember the name of her books. And she then starts seeing me through a number of chapters of adult that are in progress. And she is a member of the Penn New England Board and head of the committee to find candidates for the Penn New England Discovery Award in fiction. So she nominates me, and I get the Penn Discovery Award in fiction for adult in progress. And because of that...
Did that draw an agent right away?
Drew an agent right away, yep. So then I did a reading at Emerson College, and an agent was there, and got the agent. So it was... once that happens, it's an incredible incentive to actually finish the book.
I'll bet.
And then I finished the book.
So 10 years?
From beginning to end.
From
Oh, yeah.
first little spark to
Yeah.
the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
of
And I'd say 2 heavy-duty years, 2 intense years of writing the book.
Can you pick out a passage that will give us kind of a flavor of the characters and the I don't know how to describe it, comedy of manners
Right.
that the novel is?
Yeah, well, it's an ensemble, so there's many characters. I've always thought of them in terms of couples. Even though they're not all couples in the beginning, I always think of them as either being couples who must, go apart and come back together, or couples who already don't even know each other at the beginning and drawn together. And this character, I'll read
What page are you going to start?
Charles Lambert. And I'll read, I'll do this. All right, I'll read page 7. Because this was what first came to me, was the image of Charles, of this character at the golf course, and has an interaction with a Canada goose. And I wrote this fairly early on, even before I started the intense work on the novel. And I sat down one day, I had, I don't know, God knows why I had spare time. I thought, I'll just do a chapter. I'll just start it and see what happens. And this is the first chapter that remained basically the same through all those years of writing. So that was sort of interesting. I didn't change a whole lot. All right.
Okay, this is Charles.
Yes, Charles Lambert, who's a member at the Eden Rock Golf Club. Charles waggled his club and breathed in deeply as he relaxed his hands, but then a chunk of air lodged at the base of his throat. How had a moment of peace degenerated so quickly into another opportunity for anxiety? He shifted his weight to his left foot and rotated his shoulders. At least he was tall, not shrinking yet, and that gave him an edge. Even an inch or two made a difference in being able to assess the lay of the land. He could see off in the distance that old duffer Howie Amory disappear into the dog leg of number 16. And over there, a stately parade of Canada geese was marching up from Oxbow Lake. The birds acted like they owned the place, posing in their formal attitudes, luxuriously plucking at the green turf. If they could hold a club with those feathered limbs, they'd be better than he was by the end of the summer. It used to be his fortunes that were on the rise. Now it was his handicap. But a man's game only improved in proportion to the time available to work on it, and since his 50th birthday, he'd felt he had no time at all. He readjusted his grip and felt the scorecard in his pocket dig into his groin. He could sense his partners shifting uneasily as they ran out of small talk, waiting for him to take his shot. Greg, Nettie, and Andrew, all friends and colleagues, had only a 2-minute reserve of conversation, even among themselves. That is, unless they were involved in some sport so they wouldn't have to look at one another, but only look at the ball and discuss the ball and what the ball did, why it did it, and what could be done to either encourage it or keep it from doing it again. It could be a golf ball on Saturday morning, or it could be a baseball tuned into the radio in an air-conditioned Land Rover. It could be a football on a home theater screen as they fended off another sleety New England winter on tufted leather sofas. They could even be entertained by a day-glow tennis ball soaring over the heads of their wives in mixed doubles. The ball made them happy, but it had to keep moving. It made them nervous when it stopped for too long, foreshadowing the inevitable day when it and they would stop moving altogether. Is that good?
Very nice.
Yeah.
There's an affection, a simultaneous affection, and a simultaneous scorn. Maybe scorn's a bit too strong.
Yeah, scorn's a little rough because,
But-
in fact, I love everybody dearly.
Yes,
Yes.
that comes across. The
Yeah.
affection comes across, and at the same time, layered on top of that, or perhaps
Yeah.
under that, there's a certain what's a step down from scorn. A certain,
Yeah, I know. Clarity, I mean, I think I see their faults so clearly, and yet I still love them. You know, I don't want anybody to be disliked.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we like these people. At
Yeah.
the same time, we see their flaws.
Yeah, and there
Quite-
some
quite
of them are
clearly.
deeply flawed.
Yes. Do you golf?
No, I don't golf, and I had to read a great many golf novels and golf books to learn how to golf. So I've got this incredible game in my head, but I've never golfed.
So you've imaged it, but you can. But you don't
Yeah,
have,
but
you don't have to bother them.
it's really, in fact, golf was another thing that at the beginning I was thinking, what a silly game is that? But as I read more about golf, I learned to respect the game. I really now think it's an incredible game. You read enough P.G. Woodhouse and John Updike on the game, it's great, So maybe someday I'll do it. But it seems as if it's easy to get obsessive about it, is what you find out by reading all these golf novels, is that
Those guys are good, as the PGA slogan says. They are good. I more or less despise golf, but they're good.
Yeah,
They're
that's
good.
right.
I think this maybe is a teasing affection,
Yeah.
would be maybe more accurate.
Yes.
You mentioned Updike, and I'm curious, whom do you read? And do you think of them consciously as models for your own work? Or who did you admire in the same field?
Well, I do love Updike. I mean, I love Updike, I love Cheever, I love all the writers who were writing the big suburban novels of the 50s and 60s. And who I love
Ford,
some-
Independence Day, I'm thinking of.
I
forget
just
the
know
title
his
of
short
his-
stories.
of his new novel. I can't remember the name of it. But Richard Ford.
Yeah, no, just short stories I've read of his. Well, actually, Cheever's mostly short stories too. But yeah, I read a lot of drawing room comedies to write this book. So I actually read a great deal of writers like Thurber and Woodhouse who are writing about the 20s and 30s. Because basically, this is a drawing room, that all the contemporary action takes place at the club. There are some scenes that take place off club premises, but those are actually what we'd call flashbacks. They're not taking place right there, because I wanted to make it as claustrophobic as a country house in one of those novels.
Yeah, it does remind me of Woodhouse, morally a little bit maybe,
Yeah.
in the humor.
Yeah. And plus, he's a great golfer. He writes the best golf you've ever read. He's hysterical.
Are there any women that you admire?
A lot of my women writer, I don't know what you call, who I look up to, a lot of them are nonfiction, oddly enough. MFK Fisher and Joan Didion, Gornick. I'm very big on the women for nonfiction and men for fiction.
Interesting.
There you have it.
Is that just accidental, do you think?
I don't know.
In your next 100 years, will that reverse, or?
It could. I mean, remember, I haven't been in this biz for too long, so I haven't, my whole reading history only basically begins in like 1995. It's not only do I start writing, but I'm basically not reading until then, or not seriously reading. And the thing about the Bennington MFA program is that it's in MFA in writing and literature, because they teach you how to write by teaching you how to read. So I really didn't know how to read before then, and now I'm more serious about it.
Do they include, or if any of your teachers included there or elsewhere, an exercise of writing out by hand a copy of a page or a chapter?
Yeah. Yep. We've
Yeah.
done that.
Yes?
Yep, we've done that.
How did you find that?
I remember what I did. It's very illuminating. And of course, that's how Joan Didion learned how to write, by retyping all of Ernest Hemingway, actually, I think it was.
I didn't know that.
And then once you read her, and with thinking of Hemingway, that you can see it. It's just all right there. So yes, the writing out of another writer is an amazing experience, because you get to see it work. You can just exactly, all of a sudden you're in their brain. And then there was another exercise where we did a very short story by Toni Morrison. It's like 3 pages long. The one where she's skipping around the stream and she comes upon bones in the stream with the noose around the neck. And it's a very moving first person piece. I can't remember the name of it. And we were to write it just like that, in the sort of first person, but change the facts. And it was a pretty amazing experience.
That is amazing. It gets somebody else's words going in the eye, through the brain, and out the hand. It's very, very powerful.
It is.
I'm always interested. I want you to read another section if you have time, but I'm always interested in mechanics. Do you get up and write every day for
I sure do.
2, 3, 4, 5 hours?
Oh, yeah.
How long?
I roll out of bed, and I try to be at the computer by 7:30 in the morning. So I've always opted for afternoon carpool, never morning carpool, because if I get out of bed, it sort of ruins it, the dreaminess for writing fiction. So in fact, I go to the computer and I hope to be still in pajamas even. The longer I can stay in pajamas and keep that sleepiness going. And then I'll write straight till noon to 2 o'clock.
No coffee?
I'll come down for tea at 10 o'clock. And I also don't keep a phone in the office. No phone.
Phones are dangerous.
Phones are very dangerous.
Do you check your email?
I do check my email.
Oh, it's dangerous, isn't it?
I know, it is.
It's an addiction.
Yeah, and it's gotten worse since we've actually gotten Comcast. We actually have cable after all these years. And so it used to be dial-up, so it used to be hard for me to check email. Now it's so easy.
It's like oxygen, isn't it?
I know. Don't know what I'm going to do about that.
I just got the 5-minute signal. Do you have a single paragraph, perhaps, that you could share with us before we have to start wrapping up?
Yep. Let me just, one of my other favorite characters is Arietta Wingate, so I'll do her introduction, a single paragraph, which is the beginning of chapter 3. Arietta Wingate had skin the color of egg whites, with hands as smooth and veined as a good Stilton. Her eyes were a striking Nordic blue, fringed with lashes thick with mascara. She touched her downy hair to check for loose strands, but found it perfect, as always. With the help of her cane, she inched her chair next to the library's fireplace, whose verde antico marble mantel was carved with Roman divinities. The fire she'd requested seemed token in its cavernous maw, which was large enough to roast a heretic. Yet the small flame was necessary because even in July the paneled room was raw, receiving only the weakest sun through the casement windows framed in heavy velvet. The fire also served, as Arietta well knew, as a heavy-handed symbol of the hearth.
Ah, yes, Arietta. How did you pick that name, Arietta?
Names in social satires can be pretty broad comedy, and in fact, Arietta Wingate is the wing, because she's like the mother hen. So there's almost all the names in the book play on animals. It's like Charles Lambert is Lamb because he's so passive, and his wife is so passive. And Arietta Wingate is because she controls the gate of fertility for the women, and because it's a wing. And Arietta just because it sounded good with Wingate.
Arietta Wingate, yes.
Yeah.
I got the 5 minutes thing
Yep.
a couple of minutes ago, as I mentioned, from Andrew Love,
Yep.
so I want to begin to wrap up.
Okay.
I want to thank you, Joanne, for being on the Writer's Block and talking about your very fine novel, Addled. Is that a pun for adult? Or are we supposed to see that as a kind of a near rhyme? I've always wondered.
Oh, funny.
Adult.
Oh, nope, I hadn't thought of that. It means a few things, though. It means the adult in the brain and the egg addling. It also means to make money in Scottish dialect.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So thank you again for
Yeah,
being
thank you.
being on the
It's
show. I want to thank our wide TV audience too. If you've learned something about novel writing from Joanne Hart this evening, then the Writer's Block has done its job. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next week on the Writer's Block. Good night.